This is the story of how Chernobyl, the world's worst nuclear disaster, accidentally created one of Europe's most important nature reserves, and why the wolves living there may hold the key to curing human cancer. In April of 1986, a nuclear explosion at Reactor number 4 forced 100,000 people to flee their homes. Nearly 40 years later, the wolves that moved into the radioactive exclusion zone have evolved genetic resistance to cancer. They are exposed to 6 times the radiation considered safe for humans, yet their bodies show damage that scientists have never seen before. This is the accident that created Europe's strangest nature reserve. The Chernobyl exclusion zone covers roughly 1,000 square miles across Ukraine, with an additional 838 square miles on the Belarus side. Combined, the area spans about 4,200 square kilometers, making it larger than most European national parks. The zone remains contaminated primarily with cesium-137 and strontium-90, isotopes that will persist for decades. When the Soviet Union evacuated everyone within an 18-mile radius of the destroyed RBMK-1000 reactor, they did not intend to create a wildlife refuge, but that is exactly what happened. In 2016, Ukraine officially established the Chernobyl Radiation and Ecological Biosphere Reserve. What began as a human safety zone had become an accidental sanctuary. Environmental scientist Jim Smith from the University of Portsmouth has studied the zone for over 30 years. He told The Guardian that wolf populations are now 7 times higher than they were before the accident, simply because there is less human pressure. Elk, roe deer, red deer, rabbits, and even lynx and brown bears that had disappeared from the region for over a century have also flourished. Smith put it this way: the ecosystem in the exclusion zone is much better than it was before the accident, which proves that the impact of human habitation is far more devastating than the world's worst nuclear disaster. Today, the Chernobyl exclusion zone boasts the highest density of wolves in all of Europe. Princeton evolutionary biologists Kara Love and Shane Campbell-Staton have been studying wolves in the zone since 2014. They captured wolves, fitted them with GPS collars containing radiation dosimeters, and took blood samples for genetic analysis. What they found stopped them cold. The wolves receive an average of 11.28 millirem, approximately 0.11 millisieverts, of radiation every single day. That is more than 6 times the legal safety limit for a human worker. To put that in perspective, that daily dose would be enough to cause human thyroid cancer within 3 months. But the wolves endure this exposure for their entire lives without their cells showing the expected damage. Love's team identified 3,180 genes behaving differently in the Chernobyl wolves compared to wolves outside the zone. Among those, 15 genes showed clear signs of natural selection. The 2 genes that diverged furthest from outside reference populations were both associated with cancer biology and anti-tumor immunity. A specific gene called PTPN6 stood out. It previously had positive prognostic value in bladder cancer, and the analysis showed it was prognostic in 3 additional tumor types in human patients. The researchers also found 23 genes that were overexpressed in the Chernobyl wolves and had significant positive prognostic impact in human cancer patients. In plain English, the wolves have evolved genetic changes that help them fight cancer, and those same genes appear to help humans survive cancer too. The fastest evolving regions of the Chernobyl wolf genome are concentrated in and around genes associated with anti-cancer and anti-tumor immune responses. Love has been asked repeatedly whether the wolves look strange or deformed. Her answer is direct. She told reporters she has not seen a single wolf with 5 legs or more than 2 eyes in the exclusion zone. Externally, the animals appear completely normal. Their peculiarities only become apparent on a genetic level. The extreme environment has created strong selective pressure. The wolves that survived were those whose bodies could handle the radiation particularly well. Over at least 6 generations, and likely 8, a population is developed that is better protected against cancer. The findings were published in the journal Molecular Ecology in 2024. Radiation did not just affect the wolves. Eastern tree frogs, which are normally bright lime green, have been found in the exclusion zone with pitch black pigmentation. This is a rapid evolutionary adaptation called melanism. A field study from 2017 to 2019 led by Pablo Buraco of the Doñana Biological Station in Spain found that frogs living near the most contaminated sites from 1986 were much darker than frogs from control ponds outside the zone. The darker coloration mapped directly onto proximity to the radiation hotspots from the spring of the disaster, not to the dose each frog absorbs today. This suggests rapid natural selection. Rare dark individuals had a survival edge when radiation was intense and diverse shortly after the accident. Their offspring inherited those traits as the population rebounded. Melanin, the pigment responsible for darker skin, protects against radiation by dissipating the energy of radioactive particles and preventing damage to cells. 10 to 15 generations have passed since 1986, which is enough time for a pigment-linked adaptation to spread through the population. The study was published in Evolutionary Applications in 2022. And subsequent reporting in 2025 and 2026 has brought the discovery to wider audiences. The exclusion zone is home to approximately 900 wild dogs, about 250 live around the ruined reactor, and another 200 occupy the nearby abandoned city of Pripyat. A major genetic study published in 2023 found that the dogs living near the power plant are genetically distinct from the dogs living just 10 miles away in Chernobyl City. Researchers from North Carolina State University and Columbia University identified 391 outlier regions in the dog's genome that differed between the two populations. From those, they identified 52 candidate genes possibly related to exposure to nuclear contamination, involving DNA repair, immune function, and stress response pathways. The two groups of dogs have become genetically distinct, despite living only 10 miles apart. Bizarre photographs of blue dogs circulated online in 2025, leading many to believe radiation had turned them blue. Scientists determined the truth was much less dramatic. The color came from a leaking chemical toilet that stained their fur. No mutation, just a mess. Przewalski's horses had disappeared from the wild by 1969. In 1998, a small group was introduced into the Chernobyl exclusion zone as an experiment. Since their release, the population has increased sevenfold, and the zone is now home to one of the species' largest natural populations in the world. The horses show no signs of ill health and have even moved into the Red Forest, one of the areas initially most affected by radioactive contamination. Denis Vishnevsky, the zone's lead naturalist, called the existence of this free-ranging population something of a small miracle. Globally, there are now about 3,000 Przewalski's horses. A significant portion of them live in the shadow of the ruined reactor, now sealed beneath the massive new safe confinement structure completed in 2016. A strange black fungus called Sphaerospermum was discovered clinging to the interior walls of the ruined reactor, one of the most radioactive buildings on Earth. In the late 1990s, microbiologist Nelly Zhdanova documented 37 fungal species in the shelter surrounding the reactor. C. Sphaerospermum dominated the samples and showed some of the highest levels of radioactive contamination. The fungus is considered radiotrophic, meaning it may use radiation for energy. Its dark pigment, melanin, may allow it to harness ionizing gamma rays through a process called radiosynthesis, similar to the way plants use chlorophyll to harness light for photosynthesis. Recent studies have found that several strains of C. sphaerospermum grow faster when radiation is present and even move toward it, a behavior Zhdanova called radiotropism. NASA is now studying this fungus for radiation shielding on future Moon and Mars missions. On the International Space Station, the fungus grew faster when exposed to space radiation and blocked a large amount of it from penetrating other surfaces. Some studies have shown the fungus increases growth by about 10% in space conditions. Scientists are exploring how to create fungal bricks using the mold, lightweight building materials that could protect Moon or Mars bases from cosmic radiation far better than heavy lead shields. A new study published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B on May 20, 2026 put hard numbers on what researchers had suspected for years. Led by ecologist Svetlana Kudrenko, the study documented 13 terrestrial mammal species across the exclusion zone using camera traps. The cameras recorded a total of 31,200 observations across the study area. Of those, 19,832 occurred in the Chernobyl reserve. The study confirmed that animal abundances within the exclusion zone are similar to those in 4 uncontaminated nature reserves in the region. The authors described the zone as a radioactive Garden of Eden. With farmland replaced by forests, the area of woodland in the zone has increased significantly since the accident. Forest species like white-tailed eagles and spotted eagles have increased in number, while agricultural species like swallows and kestrels have declined. These changes are a consequence of ecological succession, not radiation. In February of 2022, Russian troops launched a large-scale invasion of Ukraine via Chernobyl. Beyond the immediate danger to the animals, forest fires triggered by enemy drones and artillery create an invisible threat. The flames can release radioactive particles into the air. The ongoing war has also prevented Kara Love and her team from continuing their wolf research in the zone. Despite these new threats, radiation, fortifications, and barbed wire, the Chernobyl zone remains a kind of wildlife sanctuary. Nearly 40 years ago, a nuclear reactor exploded and forced 100,000 people to leave their homes forever. The land they abandoned was supposed to be uninhabitable for generations. Instead, it has become one of the most important nature reserves in Europe. Wolves with cancer-resistant genes, frogs that turned black to survive, horses that came back from extinction, a fungus that eats radiation and could protect astronauts on Mars. This is rewilding not by design, but by disaster. Nature did not wait for permission. It did not wait for the radiation to fade. It moved in while the ground was still hot. The lesson from Chernobyl is not that nuclear disasters are good for wildlife. The lesson is that when humans step aside, nature does not hesitate. It takes back what was always its. And sometimes, in the most unlikely places, it evolves into something we never knew possible.